Hello everybody, this is Jeff Janess and welcome to our first lab exercise in Geoprocessing in ArcGIS Pro. This lab exercise we're going to be talking about the default geodatabase and what it's used for. It's basically just the place where tools offer to save data when you open a tool. Now, just to be clear, you can always change the location when you're running a tool. You can save data anywhere you want, but the default is to this default geodatabase. Now, when you create an ArcGIS Pro project, as part of the process, it actually creates a file geodatabase as part of the project, and typically that's set as the default geodatabase. Now, that can be changed, but the normal way ArcGIS Pro is set up is that it'll write to that file geodatabase as the default. Now, this file geodatabase in the project is normally a decent place to keep data, and it works just fine for most purposes. And there's times you want to change it. Maybe multiple users are all working on a common project where they're all contributing data to a single overall purpose. And so there are ways to change your default geodatabase to point to other geodatabases, and that's what we'll cover in this lab exercise. We'll also see how the default can be changed for a project, but that doesn't mean it's changed for all new projects. When you set the default, it's saved with the project. All right. So let's start off. First, we're going to open a brand new ArcGIS Pro project. We're going to save it somewhere. We're going to create a file geodatabase as the default. So let's start that up. We're going to make a new map. And first, we have to decide where we're going to save it. I have created a brand new folder for this, and I'm just going to save it into that folder. It won't be exactly the same as you see in the pictures, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to put it in this lab demo folder, and I'm going to name the new project Default Geodatabase Lab. I'm not going to create a new folder for this project because I already made one, and this will be the only project saved in that folder. Okay, let's take a look at that folder just to see what it looks like. Use the catalog view. If we open up the folders, we see that here's the lab demo folder that we're writing to. Open it up and see when we created the project file, it also created this geodatabase with the same name as the project. And it's set as the default geodatabase. You can tell because it has a little picture of a house next to it. All right, let's get started on the lab exercise. First, we're going to load the shapefile, the plots of the rock project area. So we go to Add Data. Okay, first step here is, now that we've got the data loaded, is we want to check the location of our default geodatabase. We do that back here in the catalog. All right, so here it is. We can kind of see the path of it here. We put the mouse over it and hover it, we can see it all appear. We can also find the path by right-clicking on it, doing Copy Path. And once we've copied the path, we can just open up a copy of Notepad or something and paste it in. And here's the full path. And by the way, this will be one of your homework questions, so make sure you know how to do this. Another way to get to that path, by the way, is to open up the properties for the geodatabase. And it'll be in here in the General tab as well. There's the same path. Okay. Okay, next step is to observe how the tools use this default geodatabase. So let's come back to our map. Let's just open up the buffer tool. We're not going to run the buffer tool. I'm just going to show you how the tool sets stuff up. So type buffer. Now, if I were going to run the buffer tool on these points, I just drag the points over. And notice it has given a name. It's suggesting a new name for the output buffer feature class. If I want to know where it is, I can click on it once and it just fills up with text. And notice that the default geodatabase lab is where it's being saved to. Okay, so that's how it's using the default. Now let's try changing the default geodatabase. We're going to do that by going here. We're in the folder with our lab data, and I'm just going to put it in the same folder. It doesn't have to be. You can put it wherever you want, but all you do is right click in here somewhere, go to New, File Geodatabase, and you've done this before in other labs, and we're going to call this your name, and I'm just going to type mine in here, Automation Lab. So that's what we're going to call the database. Now you notice this is a normal file geodatabase. It doesn't have a little house picture. This is the default geodatabase, and it does have a little house picture. Now how do we make this the default? Well, you actually have to go up to the databases section here in the contents pane. And notice that when we created it in that same folder, we find it the same geodatabase in the databases. Now, generally, when you use the catalog view from a project to create a new file geodatabase like we just did, then that geodatabase will be automatically connected to the project, and you'll see it up here in this databases section. So ours is there. Once we're here in the databases section, we can right-click on the geodatabase, and it has an option to make default. So we're going to do that. Little house moved. Now this is new one is the default. All right, so let's see how the tools behave differently now. So we go to the tools. Let's fire up the buffer tool again. Bring in this feature class. All right, it's still calling it this name, but if we click on it now, we see that the default suggested place to save it to has moved to our new default. So now the tools, in fact all tools that we run in this ArcGIS project, will default to this location. If we decide we don't want to put it in that location, it's always easy to change. We hit the little pick output location, and we can go anywhere we want that our computer can see. So that's always a flexibility. All right, we're not going to run the tool. But now I want to show you how this is actually saved with the project. So I'm going to save my project. I'm going to close this project. We can find I created the new project in this folder here, so I can just open that up. I'm in Windows File Explorer right now. This is the ArcGIS Pro project file, so I could get to this by either starting up ArcGIS Pro and then opening this project, or I could just double click on this APRX file. So that's what I'm going to do now. That'll open up the same project we just had. Okay, now if we run the tool again, we'll go to Analysis, Tools. Let's pull this in and let's see where it's offering to save it. Yep, it's still remembering our default location that we set manually. So that's how this default location is saved with the project file itself. If we open up a brand new ArcGIS Pro project, you can just start without a template, add a map, add some data, open up a tool, check the default. Notice that it is not going to the default we set. So when you save a default geodatabase, it only applies to that single project. It does not apply to new projects that you are creating. Now, one last point. I did mention earlier that this business of it's setting the file geodatabase as created with the project as the default. Well, and there are exceptions to that. If you ever do want to change that, you just go to the options here. You go down to the general section, and then here in the create projects section, you can actually change that. You could set some common geodatabase to always be the default location for all new ArcGIS projects. But that's not how most people are running ArcGIS Pro. I just want you to know this is available if you ever want. Okay. All right. That's it for Lab Exercise 1. Thanks so much, everybody.